Most things are simple. If you want to find success, the first step is you have to start. And the second thing is once you start, don't stop.
Master in the SEO space, working with clients like Russell Brunson and generated over $100 million plus in revenue without any ad spends, Damon Burton.
I always felt confident that I would do something, but I didn't know what. I gave myself the freedom to not know the answer.
What are the major shifts that happened in the last 17 years?
SEO is still SEO, but the vehicles that you use has changed.
What it actually takes to be recognized as an expert in the industry?
First thing is patience. Pick something that you can be passionate about, because if you're passionate about it, you will do it better and longer.
Why do you think so people focus on how they can make money now?
For some people, they're selfish about the relationship. There's an untouchable layer that you can't get to other than relationships.
Are super sane, focused, patient, and running a successful business. What's the secret of that?
I'm in a position now where it's not the quantity of things I do, it's move one big thing better than 10 little things.
So please welcome Damon Burton. Hey, Damon.
Hey, RJ, thanks for having me. I appreciate the intro. A lot of fun stuff we're going to talk about.
Yeah, I'm super excited. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I enjoyed the intro, and like you said, you mentioned Russell Brunson, and you got the great background going on. And I saw Steve Larson and Catherine Jones, and a lot of friends from Inner Circle in there, so it was cool.
Yeah, man. It's been a crazy ride. Well, I would love to talk about, a brief backstory, like how you actually got bitten by the SEO and entrepreneurship bug, like how that actually got started for you, and you felt like, this is my thing or my calling.
Yeah, I could probably split that into two stories, and I'll try and be short, and then we can go deeper where you want. So I think there's a little bit of a different story for entrepreneurship, and then there's a different one for SEO. Entrepreneurship, I always felt confident that I would do something, but I didn't know what. Like I felt confident I'd find a successful path doing my own thing. But I think the important thing in this topic is, especially newer entrepreneurs, and social media glorifies everything, and so we see everybody having these really cool wins. And I gave myself the freedom to not know the answer. And that relieves so much stress because everybody else is like, I want to make $1 bazillion. I want to do it tomorrow. And I saw this guy on Facebook that did it. And you don't see the whole story behind what actually happened. So there's a really great quote that says something like, oh, overnight success takes 10 years. And so what you're usually seeing is like the 11th year. So there was a lot of paths on my entrepreneurship journey, but that's kind of the short answer. And then SEO is the way that I got into that was I started doing design. So my background was originally web design. And then I had a client ask me a question, and they said, what do you know about Google? And I said, I know enough that I can probably help you, but I don't know enough that I feel comfortable charging you, but I also don't want to work for free. And so what I did is I said, how can I solve this problem and turn this into an opportunity? So I made a proposal to them where I said, how about we agree to these goals. I don't charge you anything unless we hit these goals. And if we do, you owe me retroactively, and we start a monthly retainer. So that way I was incentivized to succeed, but they didn't lose anything. They either got free work or they won. And so I ended up hitting those goals with SEO. And then I took that to a second client and offered them the same deal. And they took that offer, and I was successful with both of them. And so right at that moment, I even before I got into SEO, when I was just doing design, I knew I didn't want to be an agency that offered everything. And so right then I said, I think SEO is probably my thing. Let's commit to that and see. And 17 years later, I'm still in SEO.
Oh wow, that's really amazing. So I'm really curious just to ask is, when you actually got into SEO, like one was sort of like by accident because somebody actually asked from you, and then you were like, okay, I probably have some certain sort of knowledge, and let me try to implement that. But when you actually got into the rabbit holes, what were the very first misconceptions that actually broken about SEO that you realized like this is not the way that SEO actually works? So what was the first misconception you had that actually got broken?
Well, it was probably into it a few years, because when I first started, it was when a lot of these current misconceptions worked. And so there used to be things that would work that was, quantity before quality, and now it's quality before quantity. And so that could be, content, and that could be backlinks and things like that. So, when I first started SEO, actually, here I'll give you a good story. So when I first got into it, if you're familiar with SEO, let me break it down a little bit for the audience in case you're not familiar.
Sure.
So, like you said, it stands for search engine optimization, and the goal is to show up higher on search engines for words you can monetize, but without paying for ads. And so the way you do that is build up the
Mm.
credibility of the website. And the way you build up the credibility of the website is there's primarily three categories of fulfillment. So the first category is your site structure. It's simple things like, does your website load quickly? Is it mobile friendly? It's things that you and I as a customer that we like and don't like about a website. Google favors and disfavors those same things. So then the second category would be content. Do you clearly communicate the problems that your product or service solves and the value propositions? And then the third category is external credibility. So do other people talk about your brand? Do they give you reviews? Do they link to it? So most of your visibility is going to come from the latter two, the content and the credibility, but it will only be effective if you have a good built website for it, all that other efforts to bounce off of.
Mm.
So that's kind of like a quick explanation. Now, when I first got into it, we talked about some things you could do quantity more than quality. And a big part of that was links, when another website would link to your website. And so each of those links counts as a vote in the search engine popularity contest. So there
Yeah.
used to be these programs. There still is. They're just not effective anymore. But there's programs that would like directory submission programs, and so you could basically create a profile for your website where you'd have your website name, your website link, and a paragraph description about it. And then you'd put in the words that you would want to show up on Google for. And it would go spam it to all these websites that would accept these submissions. Now, that used to work. And then what happened was I got thinking about how unrealistic it was, how
Yeah.
these directories, a real customer would never go to a website, click on the business category, click on the consulting category, click on the design category, click, 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 because that's what Google's for. You just go to Google and you type what you're looking for. So I got thinking, if this looks spammy to me and real users don't use this, Google's probably gonna punish this at some point. So I started undoing all those, and I stopped creating new links to directories. I started cleaning up the links that we had submitted for clients in the past. And what happened was in 2012, Google came out with an algorithm update called Penguin, and Penguin started to go after these things. And so that's really one. There was two really big algorithm updates in 2011 and 12. One was called Panda and one was called Penguin. And those went after low quality content and low quality links. So that I was really glad at the time. I was nervous at the time because I was undoing the things that had brought our customers success. And I was taking a bet and hoping that I was making the right call. And so I was either going to be really successful or I was going to undo everything. And
Yeah.
luckily, I mean, luckily and not luckily, then these algorithms came out and all these other websites got punished. And because these websites got punished, other SEOs started going out of business. And because other SEOs didn't know how to fix the problem, but I had already made a proactive effort to clean things up, I had kind of a process. And so that was the first year when business started to scale pretty quickly. So that's kind of the first thing that comes to mind when we talk about misconceptions is when I started to pay attention to quality control, because if us as humans can identify poor quality things, then Google's infinitely smarter than us as an
Exactly.
algorithm. That's kind of the first thing that comes to mind.
Yeah. I mean, like that's really interesting that you try to avoid the shady stuff, like that, like ultimately at the end of the day might get slapped or might get shut down, because the way that you knew it was sort of like unethical, like one way or the other, right?
Hmm.
It wasn't, or it was probably working that time, but you knew at the end of the day it's gonna close either ways, sooner or later, whatever, right?
Yeah, and so what I learned from that was to kind of trust my instinct and be willing to do things differently than the industry. And now I don't listen to a lot of people ask me where I get my information from or who I follow, and I don't really follow anybody in the SEO world. And there's some great people, but usually what happens, like I don't really go to SEO conferences because one person will regurgitate something they heard from somebody else and they'll say the same thing they heard from somebody else, and it
Yeah.
ends up just being a bunch of gossip and nobody knows what actually works. So going through that experience of taking a bet on myself and it having great success gave me the confidence to do that ever since. And so now we create our own processes, we test our own things, and we don't get caught up with everybody else trying to cut corners.
Yeah, exactly. So like apart from like as you mentioned quality and quantity, which was definitely one thing that I've sort of like transitioned over time on search engine base, what else you think that have actually changed a lot, considering that you've been into the SEO side for like 17 years, which is in the digital world is still a long time, because so many things probably like in 1 year itself, like chat gpt and things like that just came in and like just
Hmm.
transitioned so many things into that pace. So considering like 17 years, that's a long time, even in like SEO. So like what are the things that are major shift that actually happened in the last 17 years back then to now?
Well, it's kind of a lot, and it's also very little in the same answer. So there's been changes. So I'll answer both. So on the
Sure.
on the side where there's been a lot of changes, there's been improvements on what matters. So does page speed matter became a bigger thing. Mobile friendliness became a big thing in 2016. Your website can actually show up differently in a search engine. One for how it looks on a phone, and one differently how it looks on a desktop. And so if one of those designs is better or worse than the other, you can actually show up differently on search engines. Video has changed things. And like you said, ChatGPT has changed things. So there's lots of different things. But my friend had a good analogy. He compared it to music. So if you think about
Mm,
music over the centuries, music never went away, but
exactly.
the vehicle did. It used to be records, and then it used to be 8 tracks, and then it used to be cassettes, and then it used to be CDs, and then it's evolved to MP3s and online streaming. But music never went away. So that kind of made sense to me when you compare that to SEO. So SEO hasn't gone away. Music is still music, SEO is still SEO, but the vehicles that you use has changed. But if we talk about those three main pillars of SEO that I mentioned earlier, which are structure, content, and credibility, those haven't changed. Now, the things within them have. And so, if you stick to the basics, so this is the other side of the answer where very little has changed. If you stick to the basics of focusing on quality, structure, and design, quality user experience, quality content, and quality credibility and reputation, then I never have to get distracted about the algorithm changes. Anytime there's a new algorithm, my clients are either neutral or up. And so in the 17 years, I haven't had a client get a penalty. And it's because I don't get caught up in like, what's the short term things I can do? Instead, you focus on the long term quality.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, that's really a great insight, especially talking about that apart from the SEO on the front side, so many things that have also actually evolved on the back side as well, even in terms of the content, the way that the content actually presented now compared to what it was earlier on, and the transition, even on all of those things that actually happened.
Yeah. I think out of all the variables, content has probably changed the most or become more
Yeah,
important. I think links have gone down a little bit, and I think content has increased.
exactly, exactly. So there's one thing that I'm really interested to know, which is, and I think it happens in every single field or every single category, but I'm curious just to know your thoughts. Is somebody who've actually been in the SEO space for so long, and there's so many beginners out there who just call them like, we are the SEO expert. They're making
Hmm.
like hardly like 2 grand a month. At
Hmm.
the end of the day, they're calling like SEO expert month. What's actually takes to be on the top? Like, what actually requires them for the people who are selling SEO or whatever the service it is?
Hmm.
We're talking about SEO a lot since it's more relatable for other listeners as well,
Yeah.
based off the discussion. What it actually takes to be on that certain level where you actually master that skill set and also be recognized as an expert in the industry, and then you not only get that authority, but you also get paid according to that as well. So, like, what's your thought around it?
That's a good question. The first thing is patience.
Yeah.
You have to pick something, right? And you've chatted with Russell, and I'm in his inner circle, and he has a good story about um, before he before he launched ClickFunnels, he was always trying other things. And so he was in
Exactly.
internet marketing, and he was at a conference, and everybody would go up to this one guy for web design and this one guy for paid ads. And the way that Russell kind of shares the story is like, well, why did nobody come to me? Because I do all those things. And that's the problem, is that nobody knows you for what you are an expert in. So pick something that you can be passionate about. And there's a lot of truth. A lot of people will say, if you're passionate, then the money will come. But it's true, because if you're passionate about it, you will do it better and you will do it for longer. And then people begin to know you. And so what happens is, now you are no longer an option. Like in my space, people don't generally say, well, here's Damon and 5 other people. You
Hmm.
become the only option. And
Exactly.
you build up a reputation where, I don't spend any money on ads for our agency, and I don't even do any outbound marketing. But in my example, and then what happens with others, is you become such an expert and drive such good results that you get referrals. And when you get referrals, then you increase your status and who you get referrals from. And the more successful you become, the more successful of clients you deal with. And then the more successful clients you deal with, they let you in behind closed doors and make connections to these bigger deals. Like Russell's a great
Hmm.
example. So
Exactly.
Russell's one of our newer clients, and I could have never bought paid ads to get in front of him to convince him to become a client. So you establish authority through your expertise and results, and then you also get referrals. So patience is the one thing. You got to pick an expertise that you can become known for, and then you have to give it enough time, that people continually, in any form of marketing, like people have to see you multiple times, and then eventually they go, oh, that's the person when I need that thing. I'm not going to go shop anywhere. I'm just going to go ask RJ
Yeah.
and go, I'm ready.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's really interesting, that the way that actually you define that, because since we were talking about for us, like for him, like he's been into the space for like, first of all, like 20 years by now.
Mhm,
And when he launched his own ClickFunnels, like it was like almost like around 10 years at the moment right now, which
mhm.
we're close to that. So considering all of those facts, like it took him like 10 years just to even like realize like what is the thing he can be actually be known for in the whole marketplace, not like so many other things, as you already mentioned.
Well, what's funny about him is, at that 10-year mark, I don't think that even he recognized that, because he'll often talk about how, the other co-founder, Todd, it was Todd that said, you need to hold still. Like, I
Yeah.
spent all this time building this product. Now you need to go market it. So for at least 1 year, like after they launched it, he was ready to just go find the next thing. And so it's interesting that sometimes you need somebody else to say, hold on, we have a good thing here. Let's see where this goes. And especially now, we touched on earlier about, social media kind of being distracting and just showing only the shiny objects. Sometimes you might have a really good opportunity in front of you, but because it wasn't massively successful in one night, you think you have to go find the next thing. Sometimes you just need to slow down and give it a little bit of time.
Exactly, exactly. And second thing that you mentioned in the conversation was, and I actually created a reel similar to that, probably I think yesterday or day before yesterday. I was talking about the people who were actually was able to build relationship, was able to cut in line compared to the people who might be even like 100 times better, but they aren't able to like just be there visible. And I was
Mhm.
giving this analogy of Russell itself. Like you cannot make Russell a client, like even you like so much better. It's like how you can cut in line, like how you can build that relationship at the end of the day so that you become visible. So in your case, like you've actually used that a lot. And as you mentioned, things like that requires patience. So for you,
Mhm.
how you were able to have that patience again, like after considering even like 17 years, but having that patience so that you can build relationship with the industry leaders in the market, so that at the end of the day they can also become client. Was that the end goal in the mind, or it was more around be association?
It wasn't the goal, no. I had you might know Josh Forty. He's a good
Yeah.
friend of mine, and he's how I got introduced kind of into this funnel world. It was at FHL 3 years ago, and I'll give you a quick funny story. So we were at FHL, and Josh is known in the ClickFunnels world, and him and I had become friends in the months before this FHL, and so I went with him, and he had an early access wristband, and so he had. I think he had a blue one and I had a red one, and so I would go kind of everywhere with him, and he'd introduce me to people, but then when it was time for the event, he could go past this invisible line
Mm.
and get a seat a couple minutes earlier, and I didn't care about any of the other stuff. I was I was frustrated that I couldn't just go hang out with my friends. And so I went to one of the kind of the security customer service people, and I said, "Hey, I don't want anything for free, but my friends are back there. Can I pay to get a different wristband?" And they said, "I don't know. Go talk to these other people." And I went to talk to these other people, and they ended up connecting me with the sales guy, and he says, "No, you can't go back there. Early access is only for people that have won awards or are in our coaching programs." And he says, "Are you interested in coaching?" And I said, "Honestly, no." And he says, "What about a mastermind?" And I said, "Maybe." And so then he tells me about Inner Circle, and he says, "Well, Inner Circle, you have to make at least $1 million a year, and you have to have this qualification, this qualification." And I said, "Okay, yeah, I meet all those criteria." And then he says it's $50,000. And so I just, in my mind, I went like, what the hell just happened? I went from just wanting to pay, like I thought I would pay $1,000 for a wristband. I was willing to
Yeah.
pay that much. And then all of a sudden I went from 1,000 to 50,000. But while I was there's a good thing in the story is like, while I was there to compress time. I was there to learn things in other different types of marketing, different than SEO. And so in that moment, it was actually a really short decision. It was probably only 10 seconds. And I said, you know what, this is why I'm here. So yeah, I'll do it. So I went from, 30 seconds earlier, uh, not thinking about $50,000 at all to paying $50,000 30 seconds later. And so this is how I got into Inner Circle. So now Inner Circle is Russell Brunson's mastermind. And so, of course, I knew who Russell was, but at that point, I certainly had no intention of anything from Russell.
Mm.
And now I'm in my third year of Inner Circle. And over those years, Russell would send me a message here and there. And so this comes back to the answer to your question is no, I didn't have any intention. And when you really give value for the genuine intent of just helping somebody and not expecting anything in return, amazing things happen. So I know amazing things can happen, but I don't expect them. And so that
Yeah.
helps with your patience because now you're not expecting anything. So you don't have to be impatient. You're just helping somebody. So what had happened was over the years, I'd see Russell at events and say hi. And then while everybody else was asking him for everything, I was asking him for nothing. And then he'd send me a message because he started to, hear that I did SEO. And then he started to see some of the posts I would make, and he started to see some of the people that I would work with that were mutual friends. And then I imagine there was conversations that people would mention something, and then he would send me a message on Voxer and just ask me an SEO question. And I would just answer it. I wouldn't ask if he wanted a proposal. I didn't ask
Yeah.
if I could do it for him. I just said, here's the answer. And then the messages would be a couple times a year, and then they started happening, every couple months, and then they started happening every couple weeks, and they got shorter and shorter and shorter until finally he said, "You know what? I'm gonna pass this to somebody else and introduce you to the team, and why don't we just get started?" So I didn't expect anything at any point.
Exactly. Wow. And also, I think if I'm not wrong, you actually became the Inner Circle Member of the Year as well, right?
Not the year, but I've twice been of the month. Yeah. So
Yeah.
two.
Yeah.
I'm in my third year, so the 2 complete years I've been at each year. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is really cool. So why you think so? Actually, first of all, like building relationships is so underrated that people just go desperately try to find ways to make money. So
Mhm.
why you think so according to you? Because like for me personally, like that building relationship have definitely played a crucial role in order to building the business as well, because one time like when you have like one person in a really goodwill, it just helps out on all the other people as well moving down the road, right? So
Mhm.
why you think so people just overcomplicate the essence of building relationship, and all they focus on is the monetary side, like how they can make money now, like how they can do things now, instead of focusing on something that can also nurture in a longer perspective, and that can definitely help out in the longer run as well, even if you don't expect.
I don't think people, for some people, they have a misunderstanding, and so they're selfish about the relationship. And what they don't realize is that, of course, it would be amazing if great things happen with these big relationships,
Yeah.
but when you focus on helping somebody, here's the part that people miss, is that it feels good. And so when you realize that you can establish a relationship and meet great people, and your priority is not making money from them, but it feels good, then it's like, okay, cool, I can keep doing this. So when I started to embrace this concept is it was kind of in backwards order. Is I just enjoyed helping people because it feels good, and so I still help people all the time. On my consulting side of things, I charge $1,000 an hour. But if there's somebody
Yeah.
that I feel like I can help, and I know that they will actually take action on it and not waste my time, I help people for free all the time because it feels good. And so what happened was I would just help people, and then it started to turn into clients. And eventually I realized, "Oh, I can do both. I can keep helping people, but now I'll be more proactive and I'll look for opportunities." And then in doing that, it feels good. So if nothing else happens, I
Yeah.
get to meet cool people and it feels good. But then the more I did
Exactly.
it, the more I got introduced to other people, and the more my relationships got deeper, and the more I met higher and higher profile people, and then it started to turn into deals. Like all of my biggest deals, like I'll think of three off the top of my head. So one is Russell. One is we worked with the retail division of the Utah Jazz team store, the NBA team, and then three is a multi-billion-dollar international commercial real estate company that owns. You probably are familiar with the Burj Khalifa, the world's
Yeah.
tallest tower. So we worked with the company Emaar that owns that. All
Oh, that's
three of
great.
those are relationships. Were built from relationships and referrals that you cannot market your way in. You cannot run emails. You cannot run ads. You would never get those. And then I'll end with one other example is Josh 40 and I were talking about this concept of relationships just last week. And he was talking about when Elon Musk went to acquire Twitter, he just sent a text to, I can't remember if it was Larry or
Larry
the other,
Page.
yeah, at Google, and he says, "Hey, do you want to invest in Twitter?" And the one, he writes back and says something like, "Yeah, I'd probably be interested. How much?" And Elon Musk texts him back $1 billion, and he's like, or one of them texts a billion, the other writes back and says, "Well, I think I should do too." Like, how are you going to just text somebody over $1 to $2 billion unless you trust them because you have a relationship? So
Exactly.
it's almost like there's layers to this. So in the beginning, there's nothing wrong with running ads and marketing in any form, but there's an untouchable layer that you can't get to only other than relationships.
Yeah. Wow. That really sums it up, as you actually mentioned, because like you can market yourself like so much. It's like considering even like we mentioned all the other clients that you work with, and also Russell and stuff like that. Like he spent like, I don't know, like uh 10 to 13 years, something like that, for like finally put his hands on like Tony Robbins so that they can possibly like collaborate, and how they had a video on ClickFunnels as well. They were talking about like how long it took them just to
Mhm.
like build that connection so that they can start to work together on a massive project, or stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, like the way that you've said that, it's so true, is because in a lot of different factors and variables, you can sell your services everywhere, but the top leaders in the industry is not going to be like, "Hey, I just saw your ad, looks cool, would
Mm-mm.
love to," right?
Yeah. Yeah, like the big deals, the bigger the deal, the more people, the more it's based on trust because they want to make a deal with somebody that's going to protect their investment.
Yeah, yeah. Well, definitely, that's amazing. I don't know how much time you already have right now, but I really want to ask from you is like, what's going on lately? Like, what you're focusing on right now? What are you doing at the moment, etc.
Yeah, this year's been interesting. We've had a lot of growth, and about a year and a half ago, I hired a COO, and so he's been taking over a lot of the operations. And it's interesting for being in Inner Circle for this third year is there's been a lot of things I have implemented, and then there's a lot of other stuff that I haven't that I want to.
Yeah,
But what's important for entrepreneurs to understand is, don't fix what isn't broken, and don't get distracted by opportunities. And so what I mean by that is being in this type of environment, mastermind, there's people that have done amazing things. And because you have these requirements to be in Inner Circle, everybody in there has accomplished at least something. And
exactly.
and so you go in and it's like, well, I'm proud that I've accomplished what I've accomplished, but then there's some people in there that they have weeks, like a 1 week that they make more than I do in an entire year. Or there's a handful of people in there that'll have $1 million days. Like every couple of weeks they have one day that's $1 million. And so you get exposed to these cool things and new perspectives on how you can do things. And in the beginning, the first year I was in the group, it was like a little bit of imposter syndrome, because I was like, well, everybody does these other things. Everybody does paid ads. And, I want $1 million day. But at the same time, there's nothing wrong with what I'm doing. And so I had to I told myself to just not stress about it and kind of
Yeah.
slow it down. And that was hard at first. But then in the second year, I started to feel kind of better understand where my place in the group was. And I started to talk to people and say, all the stuff that we're learning and sharing, I want to start implementing, but I'm nervous that it's going to take away too much of my time, that it'll affect the reputation of what I already have.
Mm,
And what I heard back was interesting, was a lot of other people that said, you know what, I did the same thing, but I chose the different path, and I did get distracted, and I did try new things, and I almost lost everything. I heard from more than one person that said, you're doing the right thing in not getting ahead of yourself. So now that I have a COO, and he's started to take over things, I'm starting to transition more of my time into integrating, stuff that you're familiar with, is, more funnels and launch more training. Like I built an SEO course a couple years ago, and I never launched it because
oh wow.
I didn't have the time. When I was done, I realized I wouldn't have the time to support it. And so I didn't want to take people's money and not be able to support them. And so
Mm,
now I know how I can do that differently. And so I'm shifting. So I'm not going anywhere in the SEO world. I'm just shifting to be even more of a public figure in the space and do more training and consulting on it.
wow, love it. First of all, like I will post up all the resources and stuff like that in the comment section, also in the description and show notes down below. One last question I want to ask before I actually wrap it up is, what's the secret of you having so patience? Like, I mean, like I've been watching you from quite a while, but you feel like that when I saw you and your content or any of your podcast interviews, I actually saw the interview that you had with Josh, which
Mm,
I actually posted a couple days ago or a week ago, something like that.
mhm.
You have this like patience going on with having full sanity with running this like super successful business, right? What's the secret of that? Like how you are super sane, focused, patient, and running a successful business. I mean, like how does it all work?
Well, I can answer some of it, and then the other part of it is probably just luck, I guess. I don't know, because sometimes I don't feel like um, it's as easygoing as I make it look. I'm definitely a calmer type of person, and so I think um, some of my interviews and things like that, because I am soft spoken,
Yeah,
it probably seems more calmer than it is. The one thing that's definitely helped is SOPs, right? Standard operating procedures. Is your team is going to be as good or as bad as the documentation you provide them. Your ability to have quality control, especially as you start to grow, is going to be as good or as bad as your documentation. So that's been a massive part. That's one thing that has definitely helped our success. It's definitely helped our reputation, and it's definitely helped my sanity. Like the more we grow, um, the more comfortable I feel my team taking things over, because I know how well documented our processes are.
Mm.
So that's been a big help. The other part has been, time management, and right now, I'm trying to figure out a new schedule for myself. So that's probably part of why I kind of laugh and go, I don't know, because historically I would get up early, and I'm not a morning person, but I would get up at 5 because I would like to get a lot done before the world woke up. And so if I could get a head start, it would set the pace for the day, and I'd be more productive for the rest of the day. And if I didn't start until 7 a.m., then I feel like I wasted 2 hours, or I missed 2 hours of opportunity. And so then it would negatively affect my productivity for the day. But
Yeah.
now I'm kind of doing the opposite. Now it's like, I'm getting burned out and I'm starting to feel exhausted. And it's like I'm still super passionate about what I do, but it's like harder to do this much stuff. And so now I'm trying to prioritize like my personal health and my personal downtime. And I feel like, I've been okay at it, better than some people, but definitely not as good as I could be. And so like I just bought a sauna 2 weeks ago, and so now I'm going out there every other day and sitting in the sauna for 10 or 20 minutes. And I'm really trying to. Um, I'm in a position now where it's not the quantity of things I do; it's more the quality of the big domino. And so now it's like I need to slow down. I need to take care of myself, and then move one big thing better than 10
Mm.
little things. And so I'm trying to change my daily routine currently.
Love it, love it. Well, Damon, first of all, thank you so much for being on the show. It was definitely amazing. Any last thing that you want to say before we round the show up?
Uh, One thing that always comes to mind, especially for newer entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs that are trying to figure things out, is a really simple concept. Most things are simple, right? Like most of the missing answers are simple, or most of the choices you have, the right answer is usually the simple one. And so, what I mean by that is, if you want to find success, the first step is you have to start. So, whatever it is that you are passionate about or want to pursue, you're not going to get anywhere over planning it. So, you need to start. And then the second thing is also simple: is once you start, don't stop. You have to give it
Mm.
enough time to build up your expertise and prove your value and build up reputation. Pretty simple.
Yeah, love it. Well, Damon, again, thank you so much for being on the show. And yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching. We're definitely going to see you guys into the next episode. Until then, peace out.